All right, should we get started? Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this 1-hour webinar on war on waste. This is brought to you by the Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence, whose tagline is compassionate leadership, always, everywhere. Now, the Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence specializes in the domain of emotional and social intelligence. Along with attended areas like neuroscience, mindfulness, the whole of positive psychology, wisdom traditions, not only from India, but also from Greece, Rome, etc., the use of most up-to-date psychometric instruments, and astute development inputs. Our approach basically is a blended approach. We have online components as well as classroom components, and very deeply customized to what people may need, what organizations may need. We have extensive experience over the last 16 years, having trained more than 48,000 executives and about 38,000 of them on emotional intelligence. And that experience has allowed us to create our own model on what comprises developing the soft infrastructure of this country so as to take it to the next level of sophistication. And the mechanism of doing it is through creating master trainers or master teachers of emotional intelligence. We aim to train about 10,000 of these master teachers. I bring you to the speaker for today. He's a very dear friend. He's the teacher himself, Hariharan, M. Hariharan. He has more than 30 years experience in the domain of, he's basically from academia as well as industry, and is a teacher at heart. He has expertise in the domain of strategic cost management, new product development, lean thinking and manufacturing, aligning people to organizational and business processes. He's very well read, he's very well thought. He brings a lot of very original and insightful comments and frameworks to the table. I personally have been very enriched by my engagement with Professor Hariharan. I want you to experience the same. He has he's done one webinar for us and is now doing the second one. And I wish him all the very best. I welcome you to this session. Professor Hariharan, I hand you over.
Thank you, sir. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet, but coming up, I think.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. Just give me a minute. I'm just starting up. Good afternoon, all. So, in fact, when we are discussing this topic, war on waste essentially is more of an operational operations management, hardcore hands-on management topic rather than something to do with emotional intelligence. What emotions got to do with war on waste? Is it not something which is more of hardcore science rather than something emotional, something to think about in the context of emotionally I'm going to address it? No. Let us see how does it go on it. I've added a prefix to this topic. I'm calling it as focused war on waste. That focus part is what is primarily I'm talking about, the human element in this whole war on waste or the emotional element in the whole war on waste. We'll come to that as we go further. Yes, there will be a lot of operation side in this, but there will be an underlying human element in this whole picture. That's what I'm attempted to do. In fact, Rajesh always has that habit of throwing some challenges at me. And I love this challenge as well. How do I make something which is seemingly a hardcore operations into a topic which is something to do with human element? Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is a brief agenda I have. War waste as identified by gurus. Here we'll be going back a lot to the Japanese gurus who started talking about this waste. Then we look at some drivers of cost, what I call as macro and micro level dimensions of cost. Then we'll spend a little bit of time of how do we understand cost behavior. And all these things is primarily for creating value for the customer. How all these things connect together and what challenges we have in sustaining this value, price, and cost equilibrium. And what is this focused war on waste? How do we integrate waste, drivers, and activity waste approach? And what is the way forward? This is a brief agenda I have. Sir, Mr. Deveshwar, I set my time for about 50 minutes. Is it okay?
Perfect. Perfect. Please go ahead.
Okay. I just set my time for 50 minutes so that I'll stop at the 50th minute. Okay. So the most popular guru for talking about the waste, the whole body of knowledge has come from Toyota. The production head of Toyota, Taiichi Ohno, was the one who classified the waste into 7 categories. For easy remembrance, some people call it as Timwood waste. Some people call it as worm pit waste. I call it as a downtime waste. Not I, some people call it as a downtime waste. I'm one of them. So what I deliver which is not accepted by the customer is a defect. It can be a bank, it can be insurance company, it can be railways, it can be manufacturing, it can be a classroom. So what is not meeting customer requirement is a defect. It may be the session also. Overproduction is primarily producing well ahead of time than what is required. For example, in the context of projects, whatever I am doing well ahead of time, any project activity I'm doing well ahead of time is more like overproduction. Doing anything well ahead of time is overproduction. Waiting, man waiting for instruction, material waiting for man, man waiting for material, man waiting for machine, machine waiting for man, all waiting for methods, all waiting for the boss to come and say yes. So all these are primarily a waste. Transportation, anything you move from one point A to point B, minimize the transportation is what we talk about. The more we move the material, the more the losses are. For example, we used to have a situation where we used to have warehouses based on the tax advantages. Now it is that particular fun has gone. Transportation. Inventory by itself is a waste, especially work in progress inventory, because work in progress inventory is more of work is pending, not work in progress. No progress, no process there. Motion is movement. In the context of manufacturing, we talk about internal movements of goods also is taken under motion. Some people take it into transportation. Either way, it is waste. Motion or movement of limbs while doing the work. Motion of decision is also a movement. How long it takes for a decision to move across a hierarchy is a motion. Rework or extra processing is another waste. So these are the 7 ways identified by Taiichi Ohno. We can reasonably correlate this particular waste to every other industry as well, not romantically but scientifically. To these 7 ways, another guru of Toyota production system, Shigo Shingo, added one more waste. That is what is called as non-utilized creativity of people. In fact, Shigo says that this aspect is the most critical aspect which triggers everything else. In fact, Ohno said overproduction is a cause. Shigo went one step further and said, anybody doing a work which is not using his creativity is a waste. So if you really think about it in that context, we are all working in organizations. We are all in different walks of life. 8 hours of official work, if I take it, are all these 8 hours, are we actually doing something which deserves our skill? If I am doing something which doesn't deserve my skill, I think it is a waste. It's a very powerful observation he made. Men can never be idle. Machines can be idle. If men should not be idle, doesn't mean ask him to produce ahead of time. Doesn't mean you have to ask him to do something which is not adding value. So see how you can use that gray matter between his 2 ears. How much you are able to use it. That is the creativity part he's talking about. Non-utilized creativity of people is identified as the 8th waste by Shigo Shingo. If you add up all the first letters, it comes to downtime for easy remembrance. To this list of 8, another guru called James Womack, he added one more waste, very, very powerful waste. He called a waste called design of product not meeting customer requirement is a waste. It's very interesting. There are so many products you'll find which actually doesn't make any sense. We used to have products which are created, which are actually the designer assumes it is going to create a value. It doesn't create any value at all. Sometimes the designer gets so romantic about the product. For example, one fan company called, I think Polar Fans, Orient, I don't remember. Early 90s, they came with a fan called Fans for Kids. Kids like all the cartoon characters. So with all his romance, the designer said, we'll have a fan with a lot of cartoon characters. Poor guy didn't realize that the basic purpose of the fan is to rotate. When the fan rotated, the figures blurred along with the marketing strategy. None of the cartoon characters are visible on the fan. They are all standing below looking up. Oh, there goes my strategy. Amen. So you have created a product which doesn't add any value to the customer. To these 9 ways, on our part, we added one more waste. Because we find it in last 30 years of consulting, I find this to be a big waste, killing everything else. A waste called policy. Hey, why are you doing this? Sir, our company policy is there, so we have to do this. How many times we blindly follow a policy? Don't take me wrong when I say that policy is a waste. I'm not telling policy is a waste in that sense. You need policies, procedures, and everything. But sometimes if a policy outlives its purpose, when its sell-by date has come, we should be ruthless in removing the policy. At times we get so emotionally attached to the policy and say, no, I can't change this policy. How many times you face this in your own company? And that is a big waste. So these are the 10 ways which we talk about. So when I say war on waste, we are trying to attack these 10 ways. Okay, can I now call us, assuming I'm a CEO of a company, I call all the people, come on guys, let us all apply common sense and attack these 10 ways? No, we need a framework, we need some kind of a mindset for doing this. Therefore, I'm slightly moving away from waste to cost. While moving to cost, I have a singular definition of cost. Any expenditure that adds value to customer is cost, otherwise it is waste. So look at everything from the context of, does it add value to customer is cost? So here I create a link between the cost and the waste. So in my opinion, there are broadly 3 plus 1 dimensions, macro dimensions for cost. The first dimension is what I call as external drivers of cost. External drivers are essentially factors not in your control, beyond the control of the organization, but what is true for the swarm is true for the bee. What hurts you also hurts your competition. What hurts the industry as a whole hurts you also. What bugs the world bugs you also. The COVID-19, I mean. So typically it includes all the pestle factors, political, economic, social, technological, environment, and legal factors. And the 5 forces Porter talked about, they form the cluster of external drivers. So most often my cost is triggered by these 11 factors. So if I have to address these 11 factors, I need to address it only at the topmost management level, not at the current level. Somebody is asking for the previous slide. Is it okay, Ajay? Okay. Yeah. I said 10 factors here, 7 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Okay, macro level, there are 11 factors. Pestle is 6 plus 5 forces, supplier power, buyer power, internal rivalry, new entrants, and substitutes are the 5 forces. This is available in the internet, so I'm not elaborating it. I'm generally not elaborating which is there in internet. So pestle factors and 5 forces are the 11 factors which are external factors. And these 11 factors are addressed by the topmost management. The second driver of cost is what I call as design driver. Design driver is a driver which is primarily committed by the structure I have created. In my opinion, there are broadly 4 kinds of design drivers which commit cost and commit value as well. Product design, process design, supply chain design. I will give a pause for the third design for some time before we go to that. See this 3 designs, if you look at it, product, process, and supply chain. More than 90% of the cost you are incurring is committed by the time the design is complete. Any amount of design, any amount of reduction I do after the design is complete is more like catching the bull by the tail. So design driver is one singular driver which is useful, which is handy in handling my external driver as well. Depending upon the kind of legal modifications, I have to modify my design. We talk about sustainability in design these days. Am I correct? In addition to these 3 drivers of design, there is a 4th driver which actually touches upon in the center of emotional aspect of a human being, which is primarily the organizational structure design. Product, process, supply chain, and the fourth one is organizational structure design. Think about it. In fact, it's the most underestimated driver of cost. We are doing consulting in a company, which is a power company. The head of technical head asked a question, told us that, hey, there are 37 signatures required for us to purchase an equipment. And I put the 37 signature. So what do you check? I check whether other 36 are signed or not. What about other 36? They also will be checking whether the other 34, 35, etc. have signed or not. And what about the first signature? He might have received the document. So the point is, what he's trying to say is, in spite of having this huge amount of controls, I still make wrong purchases. So organization structure delays our decision-making process. Organization structure speeds up our decision-making process. Organization structure sometimes are punitive, sometimes are rewarding. So organization structure plays a phenomenal role in your cost structures and also waste creation. The third driver is what I call as operational drivers. And the design drivers are addressed generally by senior and middle management. Operational drivers are classified into three categories. I'm using the Japanese words muda, mura, and muri. Muda is waste, what we saw in the first slide. Mura is primarily variability. This variability is a big killer. In fact, we will come to this variability in the next slide a little bit more elaborately, how we react to variability. We'll see that in a short while. The third driver is muri. Muri is strain. So at an operational level, these are the three factors which trigger your cost: waste, variability, and strain. I said four, right? There are only three here overall: externals, design, and operational. Yeah, the fourth one, which is the mother for these three, I call it as attitudinal driver. Attitude plays a very big role in how we handle these three drivers. Let us take a very simple example. It is my mindset, it is my understanding, it is my risk-taking ability which decides whether I should take a hedge or not take a hedge. External driver. It is my risk-taking ability, it is my mindset which determines whether I should go for a merger or not, whether I should buy a mine or lease a mine or not. Okay, coming to design. I am a designer. I am very comfortable handling this particular equipment in this particular way. Only, for example, if I am designing a product, it requires Hitachi motor. I will only want Hitachi motor. I will not take any other motor. I am very romantically attached to that. So attitude plays a big role. And one of the biggest trigger of this attitude is the performance metric. People behave in the way performance is measured. So if you take the case of design drivers, if I am time pressured, I may end up creating a product which doesn't meet my customer requirement. Quite possible. Or if I look at, let us follow what has already been done, let us repeat what has already been done, I'm not getting creative at all. Again, attitude, which triggers the design part of it. Suppose my performance metric is increase the number of common components in the product. I may end up increasing the common component to such a level, you cannot differentiate two products. So attitude plays a big role in design driver, and attitude plays a huge role in operational drivers. Muda, mura, muri, waste, variability, and strain, all three are triggered to a great extent because of attitude. My attitude towards waste, my attitude towards a defective product. Generally, our attitude is more of a defensive attitude for defective product rather than a proactive attitude of preventing it. Let us spend a little bit more time on this mura. Mura is actually the killer of all. What is this mura? Variability. How this is a killer? Normally, if you take any organization, the fuel for the organization comes from sales. Sorry, the source of the organization comes from sales. Is it attitude or mindset or belief? Right now, I'm not gone to the semantics, frankly. I'm using the word attitude, which may be triggered by my mindset. or triggered by my dogmatic belief also, or the strong belief as well. Okay. Muda is primarily waste, anything that doesn't add value to the customer. Mura is variability, and Muri is strain, strenuous postures, strenuous movements. I'm discussing Mura right now. So why this variability happens? When the variability is very high, how do we react to variability? If you really think about carefully, there are only three ways we react to variability. One is through inventory. If you go to any organization, you look at why the inventory levels are high, whether it is finished goods inventory or work in progress inventory or raw material inventory, you will bang dash into variability. I can't predict what will be the sales. Build inventory. I don't know when the machine is going to fall sick. Build inventory. I don't know whether the supply is available or not available. Build inventory. Look at the current context. People store material because they assume they are not going to get it. So variability, the normal reaction of human being is to build inventory. Second attitude, which typically trigger here, is primarily I build resources. When the variability is very high, I build resources. Go to recruitment. How do we recruit? How do we engage people? How do I add people? How do I add missions? How do I add space? We add space with lot of sufficient buffer or cushion. And why do we add that cushion? Because there is a variability. Variability is the biggest driver of my adding resources. It is inventory creation, resource creation. If you drill down, 9 times out of 10, you will land in variability. No, I can't add inventory. I can't add my resources also. Okay, add time. So the third thing we do is we add time. So if you look at carefully, why, suppose when somebody is asking me, asking us, okay, when are you, this particular thing is can be completed here? Take about a week's time, take about 10 days time, think about it. Will it really take 10 days time? I don't think so. We put a cushion buffer everywhere and say 10 days. And we are very comfortable with this 10 days, 5 days, etc. because God has given us 5 fingers. So how long it will take? 5 days. How much contingency I should take? 5%. Twice I do it, 10%. So typically variability, we try to pad everywhere. This is coming fundamentally from the attitude driver. Okay. At a very micro level, I'm going to skip through this particular slide a bit faster because it's purely operational. There are 3 micro level operational drivers. Volume, which is primarily quantity of output or quantity of input, and the distance. As an example I'm giving, volume is a major driver of cost at the micro level. Efficiency is a second driver of cost. Usage, some people call specific consumption. So this is primarily efficiency parameters. I've given only an indicative list. Rate, price, forex rate, interest rate fluctuation, okay, demand supply gap, multiple factors lead towards this. So at a very micro level, if I consciously use a color code here, if you note one thing, I use a color code of my external factor for rate, and I tried to mix up that design and operation factor for volume and efficiency. Volume efficiency is triggered predominantly by design and operation. Even though volume partially is triggered by external factors also, I mean the demand, but efficiency is predominantly design and operations. Okay. Okay. If this is what the cost is, how does the cost behave? Many of you may be knowing this famous definition of variable cost and fixed cost. Okay. I'm going to redefine this basic behavior. I'm going to redefine this variable and fixed cost. This is why am I doing this is primarily for understanding how do we take decisions on engaging a resource. Based on the engagement of a resource, I'm classifying the variable and fixed cost like this. Variable cost is a cost incurred for using a resource. Fixed cost is a cost incurred for having a resource. Are you paying for using or are you paying for having? For example, I'm paying a rent. That means I am having a resource. I am taking a third-party logistics service provider. I'm using some space with him. Based on the actual space utilization I pay him, I pay for using the resource. I'm traveling by train. I purchase a monthly pass. I can travel any number of times. I'm paying for having a resource. I purchase a daily ticket. I can travel once. I'm paying for using a resource. So when is it logical? Which is better? That purely depends upon 3 aspects. whether variable is better or fixed is better. The first aspect is volume. If the volume is low, it is better to go for a variable cost. The volume is high, better to go for a fixed cost. The second, frequency. The frequency of usage is low, is intermittent, variable is better. The frequency is high, consistent, fixed is better. Productivity. The productivity of the resource is low, variable is better. If it is high, fixed is better. I'm giving a perspective. Think about it, because why I am telling this? For example, we have in our companies a lot of contracts. We outsource the contract. We outsource a lot of our activities. When we outsource the activity, we engage the resource based on certain assumptions. We may be engaging the resource based on a variable pay, or we may be engaging the resource based on a fixed pay. Depending upon variable pay or fixed pay, we keep on paying them. And then we keep on renewing the contract based on changing that particular rate again and again, never even going back to fundamentally questioning whether our assumption of variable and fixed engagement is correct or not correct. Okay. Let us take some more deeper dive into cost behavior. Cost behavior is not necessarily based on variable and fixed. Let's take a very simple example. Canteen. In one of the cases, this is actually a work which I did with Par Excellence only. We're doing a program with one company, an IT company. So in this company, I was talking about the cost behavior pattern. One person asked, the HR head asked a question, admin head asked a question. What about our canteen cost? The case of canteen, we are paying the canteen operator, service provider, a fee based on number of plates. So if you have to reduce that cost of this, I have to reduce the number of items in the plate, which is not acceptable by the customer or by the employee. How do we do this? So I asked him, tell me one thing. Do the people wash their plates or leave the plate on the table? They leave the plate on the table. I suggested to him, please go back and ask the people to wash the plate. Why? Simple. If you wash your plate, you will not waste food. Okay, so what? When I am a contractor for food, when I engaged with you, when I quoted the price, I definitely would have assumed some wastage level. When I actually see the wastage, I can renegotiate the rate. The part is, it is definitely possible to renegotiate if you eliminate the wastage of food there. And the wastage of food is extremely high in ITES companies. You go to any of these companies where canteens are there, you'll find the people taking anything available, leaving it totally in the at the counter. Just a modification, make them wash the plate. Definitely they will not waste food. Now I'm not telling something theoretical. You go to any of the TVS group companies, whether you are Mr. Venu Srinivasan or the last person, you have to wash your plate. When you wash your plate, wastage comes down. Wastage comes down, renegotiate the rate. So behavior is driven by that. Clean the plate, save the food waste. Warehouse, space wastage. Remember, we pay the rent based on square feet, but we use the cubic feet. So use the space better, you can save the cost here. So when you want to understand the cost behavior, look beyond variable and fixed cost. I'll give a very quick example here. There's an example from Captain Cook. Long time back it happened. We had a factory somewhere in Thane, for example. I have a customer in Taloja, and I dispatch 18 tons of product to him. Another customer is in Aurangabad. Sorry, I'm in Taloja. I'm having a customer in Thane. So I supplied 18 tons of food to my customer in Thane, such items to Thane. Same month, I dispatched 18 tons to Aurangabad also. Going by simple logic, Aurangabad should be costlier. But we did the analysis, Thane was costlier. Why Thane was costlier? Because we made number of trips. So trips as a driver, not the distance, not the volume. Why I am telling this is, everywhere you go, you will find the driver to be something unique. Drill down, you can find it. It calls for a mindset to go and find it out. Okay, fine. When I talk about cost on one side and waste on the other side, I have to link these two. How do I link these two? How do I link the cost and the waste? The way to link cost and waste is fundamentally looking at cost as anything that adds value to customer is cost. Anything that adds value to customer is cost, otherwise it is waste. So if you have to look at it like that, let us look at a very, very basic inequation. Customer pays money for a value. So long as the value is perceived to be more than the price, customer is happy. This is called in economics as consumer surplus. So long as the price is more than the cost, I am happy as a producer. Life is very simple. It's common sense. If it is common sense, the fan company wouldn't have made that fan which is for kids. If it is common sense, nobody should make laws. But why companies make laws? Why people come with products that are useless? It's such a common sense from 1954, consumer surplus and producer surplus. There are two broad factors which lead towards making this particular thing tougher. One is challenges to two kind of challenges. One is external challenges, other is internal challenge. I'll be spending a lot of time on the internal challenges. External challenges I will just touch upon. Why this sustaining this inequality is difficult? On one side we talk about waste, reverse of waste is value. Other side I'm talking about cost. So I want my cost to be much lower than the value creation. So what creates this inequality to be sustained, find it difficult to sustain, is the same pestle factors, the 6 factors, and the same 5 forces of Porter. These are the 11 external factors which lead to this. But I also said at that time, the attitude is a bigger driver of cost rather than external drivers. That attitude is reflected in your SWOT analysis. Your SWOT analysis talks about strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. Your strength and my strength may be different. Your weakness and my weakness may be different. And therefore, the way you perceive an opportunity and the way I perceive an opportunity may be different. I am 100% sure at least 90% of the participants in this webinar know this story of one guy was engaged by a shoe company. He was asked to sell shoes in a village. He went to the village and came back and said, huge threat, sir. Why? Nobody is wearing a shoe there. We can't sell shoes there. Second guy went there, came back, sir, huge opportunity, sir. Why? Nobody is wearing a shoe there. We can sell shoes there. So SWOT is the first place where our attitude creeps in. Everybody has the same environment. Everybody has the same what you call pestle factors. Everybody has the same 5 forces. But the way you perceive and I perceive is totally different. How somebody looks at Facebook purchasing 9.9% share with Mukesh Ambani, the way you look at it and the way maybe Anand Mahindra looks at it are totally different, quite possible. So your SWOT is more driven by the attitude of the person who is drawing the SWOT. And that commits the cost. That commits the value. But the internal reference is the most critical part in my opinion. This is what we have to address specifically as to why this cost value equation is not sustained. The reason is very, very interesting. If you look at value, there are multiple functions which look at value in a company. Marketing looks at value. Design looks at value. After sales service or customer service looks at value. Quality looks at value. Distribution looks at value. All these functions, if you look at it, they are all in a way customer facing departments in companies. First and foremost, do these 6 or 7 guys sit together ever? Rarely. Forget about sitting them together. Do they sit within themselves? Let us look at it. Let us take a simple case of marketing. In the case of marketing, the reference for me to understand customer value are broadly 3 references. First reference is voice of customer. Second reference is competition. Third reference is the channel requirements. You ask any designer this question. If you receive 10 requests from your marketing team for product modification, out of 10 requests, how many requests talk about customer wanted it, so make it, and how many requests talk about a competition is doing it, so do it? You'll find an answer. Almost 8 out of 10 comes from competition reference. The fundamental attitude driver starts here itself. The voice of the customer is muffled by the noise of the competition. So the references for me is voice of customer, noise of competition, channel challenges. Take the case of design. Same voice, noise, and channel challenges. In addition to this, they have other challenges. Technological capability, manufacturing capability, supplier capability, my own romance about a particular design. I want to have my product nice to have feature or need to have feature. So all these factors, if you look at carefully, for every reference here, there are challenges, there are cases where there are conflicts within the references itself. So even for a designer within himself, understanding customer value is a challenge. Therefore, understanding waste is a challenge. If you have to create a war on the waste, a war needs a strategy. And the strategy has to start when you commit that waste. This is the place where we commit the waste. The first slide I talked about, other than what James Womack said, all the other 8 were actually operational. What Womack said is design. That is the level where commitment happens. If you want to arrest a tide, you have to arrest the tide at the level it is committed. Same is the case with everybody else. Anyway, we will be sharing this presentation. You can have a look at what I am talking about here. I call this as value square. Same with price. Different departments look at different kind of references. Marketing and finance is always at loggerheads. Marketing wants the price to be lower, finance wants the price to be higher because the references are different. Same with the case of cost as well. References are different. When the references are different, it is extremely difficult for somebody to look at that particular perspective. So it calls a lot of effort for an organization to look beyond the micro level, silo level references to look at the ultimate reference of a customer. This is the challenge. Therefore, what is this focused war on waste? We have to integrate waste, we have to integrate the drivers and an activity-based approach to understand this waste. So what is that? First is identify the key deliverables and activities in each of the major functions and sub-functions. We use what is called as CPOC. You can do a Google search and find out CPOC in case you are not aware of that. CPOC is a model which talks about supplier, input, process, output, customer. It's a very, very simple and very powerful model to understand your full chain. Identify the key deliverables. What I deliver as a purchase person to the next person. What I deliver as an organization to my customer. What I deliver as a maintenance person to my production person. What I deliver as a back office person to my front office in the case of a bank. Identify this. Identify the key resources used, quantity used, duration used for the major functions and sub-functions. Don't go for everything. You have to rob a bank because that's where the money is. So like that, you have to focus on where the money is. Key resources in terms of cost and investment. Apply the specific levers of Muda. Brainstorm on sessions. I will talk about this in another few minutes. Use a cross-functional approach. I have a friend of mine called Kedar Sawant in Mahindra. He always uses the word contributing functional approach. You should contribute, not crossroads, not cross, cross with each other. Okay, implementation, results validation through daily work management. This is a simple framework. I'm not elaborating this because elaborating this will be more operational and strategic, not with the theme of attitude. Okay, but this is to do with attitude. For the activities what you perform, there are certain specific levers of Muda we always suggest. Look at rework. Is an activity. Non-value adding. Is it adding value or not adding value? Is that activity performed ahead of time or on time? Is the activity producing defects? Is there any unwanted movement of resources beyond the location? All these factors can be addressed. For resources, waiting as a resource of the resource, work not done by the appropriate resource is also a loss. Man-machine movement, inventory, availability of resources, utilization of resources are the multiple factors. Now I talked about brainstorming. Brainstorming is based on a theme like this. Activities consume resources, therefore causes cost and investment. Deliverables consume activities. What I mean here? You are supposed to deliver certain output to your customer, external customer. if you're an internal department, you have to deliver certain output to your next department. And these deliverables require some activities to be performed. So these activities are committed by the time you design the process itself. These deliverables have been committed by the time you promise something to your customer. And these activities consume resources. There are two kinds of resources you consume. Either it can be a cost-based resource where you pay a recurring cost like salary, or it can be investment which is a one-time cost. So waste commitment, I'm not using the word cost commitment. Waste commitment happens at the deliverable level. Waste commitment happens at activity level. Waste commitment happens at resource commitment level. So therefore, at all these levels, at a deliverable level, if I have to look at it, I've color coded them. Is it needed by the user or process? Am I doing it because somebody needs it, or am I doing it because it's a convention? Most often, it is driven by convention rather than need. Is it needed or is it done by convention? Can it be modified in terms of parameters? Meaning, some customers say, hey, we are delivering it in 7 days' time. Is it really required in 7 days? Can I give it in 10 days? Now we talk about reducing the days. I'm talking about increasing days also. Sometimes it's worth it. For example, one of my friend, he makes designer bikes. He was telling me that, Hari, tell me a way in which I can reduce the time of delivery. I said, why do you want to do that? Don't do that. If I'm buying a designer bike, my first conversation with my other fellows are, you know what? I had to wait for this bike for 1 month. How long you waited? 6 days only. I had to wait for 1 month. The longer they wait, the more thrilled they become. The point is, at times it is worthwhile looking at in that aspect as well. Can it be modified in terms of parameters? Can we change the frequency? How frequently we deliver it? Okay. Can we change the dimension of time and space? Meaning, should it be done in the morning or should it be done in the evening? Should it be done at your location or my location? This is what I mean here. Why I'm telling this is crude oil purchase should be early in the morning, not in the night, because you'll get more. And the resultant impact on activities, resources, cost and investment. Second dimension, activity dimension. Is it needed? Is the activity needed? Does it add value to my customer or not? Can it be trimmed? Can I trim the activity? Can I reduce the duration of this activity? Can I reduce the steps in the activity? Can we change the frequency of doing this activity? Can we de-skill the activity? Can anybody else can do this activity? Can we change the dimension of time and space? And the resultant impact on resources, cost and investment. The third dimension, resource dimension. Can we use another resource? Is training needed? Can we use customer supply resource? See, the point is, these questions are not random questions. These questions, each question can have a small group to address. So actually, it is a very powerful way to look at it. If you have a team for each theme, you have much more potential to achieve your desired waste elimination instead of leaving it to the common sense of the people to do it. As a CEO, you cannot call everybody and say, come on guys, let us apply common sense and reduce cost. We have to look at scientifically. But looking at scientifically, we have to necessarily look at beyond the silo mindset of organization. In every organization, people are very protective about their own performance metric. And they fight with other departments because my priority and your priority are not similar. And finally, cost and investment level. Pretty straightforward, so I'm skipping it through faster. More questions are coming, so I will wind up a little bit faster. We can take more questions also. And very, very important, cross-functional approach to problem identification. Here, I always talk about 3 aspects. For cross-functional approach, I talk about 3 aspects here as an organizational context. I call it as 3 B's. First B is bridge. Second B is breach. Third B is break. What do I mean? Bridge is where you form temporary teams. They will come back from their department, work on a specific initiative and go back to the department. This is typically bridge. Breach. Typically when you go to a village farmland, you'll find the breach they create. They breach the thing to bring the water in. Once the water comes in totally, they close it again. Meaning, physically take the people out and create a small group. They will not be working their function for long. And then after the assignment is over, they will go back. Typically, the first one is more of handoff. Second one is more of separate teams for a short period of time. That is breach. Break is sometimes you have to combine two departments to create a single department. These are the three approaches of cross-functional approach which I suggest, where you can understand it, understand the problem better. For each of this, we have to have a set aspirational target of key cost investment. People behave in the way performance is measured. Small groups of key functionaries. Focus on impact of the interdepartmental interface and intra-departmental challenges. This is that critical part. Interdepartmental interface. What do I mean by this? To answer this question, I look at like this. Usain Bolt has the record for 100-meter relay, 9.58 seconds. Usain Bolt is the fastest man in the universe. Usain Bolt and three of his teammates in Jamaica, they hold the record for 4 into 100-meter relay. Is the record of 4 into 100-meter relay, is it less than 4 into 9.58 or will it be more than 4 into 9.58? You can keep vigorously typing in your chat box. Will it be more than or less than? I'll give about 2 minutes. You can quickly type in the chat box. More than or less than? I repeat the question. Fastest man in the universe, Usain Bolt has a record of 4 into 9.58. But whereas 4 teammates, Usain Bolt plus 3 teammates, their record will be more than or less than? Less, more. Parallelly, do one thing, do a Google search and find out what is the actual record. And somebody post it here. Do a Google search and post it here. What is the actual time taken? Do a Google search quickly, somebody. Do a Google search. Anybody? You want me to do that? 36.84. Somebody is telling that. 36.84. What is 4 into 9.58? Can you please type that also here? So 36.84. Shekhar, that's 36.84. That is 38.32. So 36.84 is the record, whereas 4 into 9.58 is 38.32. How is it possible, yeah? Yes, Nesta Caster, Michael Usain Bolt, Blake and Michael Frater. Yeah. How is it possible? Newton's first law of motion. In a 100-meter relay, the first person starts from 0, but the second person starts from -30, and they synchronize in such a way they meet at the 100th meter, around the 100th meter. By the time the first responsibility of both the person giving and both the person taking. But in reality, what happens? I complete my part of the job. I don't take it seriously to transfer it to the next person. And the next person is not serious in taking it from me. So this inter-department interface is a biggest reason for waste. And that happens because my priorities keep changing. My priorities are driven by my KPIs. I don't transfer it easily. I create waste. And intra-departmental challenges is primarily my boss is going to create some new job for me, which is what I am supposed to spend time. I'll go to the other one. Okay, apply the levers I talked about. Generate solutions. And you need to have a senior management buy-in through a review mechanism. And use 3 dimensions to classify the problem. This is very important. Any idea coming up has to be classified under 3 dimensions. What are they? The first dimension is within span of control. Normal human tendency is to put the blame on something on which we don't have any control. Waste elimination calls for removing this mindset. Very difficult mindset to remove. Whatever is supposed to be cured cannot be endured. I'm giving the ulta of that, what you call old saying. What cannot be cured should be endured. I'm giving the ulta. What is within your control should not be endured. So what is within span of control, and what is within sphere of influence, and what is beyond influence and control? Priority for implementation should be in this order. Way forward, very quickly summarizing this. Let us rethink our priorities. It has to be customer centric. Our priorities most often is triggered by our internal politics and internal KPIs. No, I'm not telling you cannot have KPIs. Don't misquote me or misunderstand me. KPIs are important, and it's very, very difficult to align the KPIs to the final goal also. Okay, therefore we have to keep on relooking and revisiting that again and again. Let us list the drivers of our cost: external, design, and operations. I have not kept attitude here in this list because attitude is all pervading. List the drivers, have a clarity about what is my cost going up because of my external factors, design what factor is leading towards this. Now, after the COVID, we have a reason for everything. Hey, why it is not done, sir? COVID, sir. So COVID is the easiest escape, what you call scapegoat available for us to say that anything delayed is because of COVID. Let us rethink our ways of spending. Use a zero-based approach. Zero-based approach does not mean your cost should be zero. Zero-based approach means go to the zero base. Zero base is go to the purpose. Define the purpose for what you spend. When you define the purpose for what you spend, that is a zero-based approach to spending. I've used the Tamil here. I've given the translation also. This is from Tirukkural, written about 2500 years back. Agar alavittidayinum kedillai pogar agalakadai. What does it mean? Even if the income is small, so be it. Today our incomes are small because of COVID. It will not cause our ruin. It is outgoing which cannot be larger than the income. Frugality is a virtue. For waste elimination, frugality has to be the mindset. I think, Mr. Rajeshwar, I'm just 2 minutes ahead of time. With that, I am completing my session. I am open for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Hariharan. Truly outstanding, very incisive, very pithy, condensed. I mean, this is the quintessence of the theme that you have spent, taught it in about 45 minutes. And there are many people requesting for your slides, which we will absolutely send to them without hesitation and delay. There are quite a few comments and questions. Let me take the questions from the question box.
Please. Any specific slide reference also you can see, no problem. Yeah.
All right. So originally when you said creativity and the value of creativity, we have Surya asking, how many employees have been selected on the basis of creativity? Most of them have been examined on learned skills, right?
That's a problem. Surya, you are right. See, when I say creativity doesn't mean I should have one Jolawala bag and then a small beard to be creative. Creativity can happen in every small part of life. Let me give a very simple example what I mean by that. And then I'll give a perspective on this, think about it. A long time back, in my first assignment when I was doing my articleship as a chartered accountancy course, I went to a place called Ranipet. There, I was trying to, they were not getting a notebook to do this. So I told this guy, I want some notes, I want to staple them together. Okay, you can visualize this. I will just show it to you, if you don't mind. Okay. So typically, this is a paper. So I was writing in multiple papers. Then I was trying to staple like this. So he asked me before that, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to make my notes and I'm going to staple them. He said, don't do that, sir. Do a kaam karo na. Sorry, do one thing. So he took me the paper, bent it like this. Then he took multiple full-scape size paper like this. He laid one above another like this. Then he put one eraser below this and used a stapler straight to press here. Is he creative or not? Highly creative. What is his job? T-boy. Creativity is innate in many of us. Till the age of 6, we are creative. The moment we got into formal education system, our creativity is killed. Somewhere we have to retain that childlike enthusiasm. In the last webinar, I used the phrase, we have to be shameless in asking questions. We have to be shameless in trying things. In fact, one of my uncle, he used to work in L&T. He's about 85 now. Every time I ask him, every time I say something to him, uncle, I did something new in this assignment. His first reaction is, I did this in L&T in 1967. He proves it also. I used to ask him, what is great about L&T? He says, in L&T, we are allowed to do mistakes. What a powerful statement. We are allowed to do mistakes. It doesn't mean you collect mistakes as a hobby. The point is, you have to try. Do we allow our people to do mistake? So the fundamental creativity comes from curiosity. Curiosity has to be nurtured. We kill curiosity. I hope I answered your question or confused you. Surya, thank you. Sir.
We have another question from Nitish Kumar. He says, it's been a pleasure to listen to you, dear Hariharan. Will you please explain Mura once again?
Mura or Muda?
Get rid of Muda, Mura, Muri.
Okay. See, this Muda, Mura, Muri are primarily the 3 M's we call it. Muda is waste. The waste what I listed in that first slide. Defect, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized creativity of people, transportation, inventory, motion, extra processing. These are what called Muda. Muda is that which does not add value to customer is Muda. Mura is variability. Variability, if you look at Six Sigma as a concept, Six Sigma directly addresses variability. When we do the DMAIC, define, measure, improve, analyze, control, what we are trying to do is primarily we measure and try to analyze the variability. We talk about the bell curve, right? So the variability, how much it is spread is what we are trying to address. Variability is a big killer. Because of variability, Muda also happens. Muri, strain is something very interesting. Strain can be physical strain. Strain can be because of the decision-making delays also. Are you getting the point? So Muri is primarily the strain what we undergo. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Do a Google search as well, you'll get a lot of gyan on Muda, Mura, Muri. And you can try to apply this concept in your own workplace also.
Okay, yes, Sriram is asking a question. Professor, according to your thoughts, what's the role of technology in the war on waste given its ubiquitous presence in every aspect of business?
See, there are ultimately we have to physically consume products. We have to physically move to one place to other place. Essentially, technology eases that process or minimizes that process or eliminates that process. It eases that process through information transfer. So in fact, we have to really apply this principle of waste in the case of your technology also. Sometimes we get so romantic about technology and then commit ourselves to a technology. In the case of technology, it is very crucial for us to understand what does it do ultimately to my life? What is the value it adds ultimately to my life? But if you think about carefully, Sriram, sometimes we take a decision on technology because everybody is taking the decision. What is my strategy? My strategy is to follow somebody else. Should technology, what is the technology I'm supposed to take? What is my relevant technology is very important. Sachin Tendulkar used a heavy bat. I will also use a heavy bat. I cannot become Sachin Tendulkar. The point fundamentally I'm trying to say here is that the technology may work for one, it may not work for another. What is the context we are using? I understand from what context you are talking about technology, you are talking about science behind it. Any methodology is a technology, is applicable for anything. Take Six Sigma itself. I will also use Six Sigma. Hey, do you have a data culture in your company? Do you have a culture of collecting data? If you don't have a culture of collecting data, don't do Six Sigma. You can't do it. Is it not? So that is the context. Is technology relevant? The relevance of technology is what I have to first of all understand before even getting into technology. Yes, sir. True.
Okay. One more question from Anup Kumar. And this has to do with what could be the good indicators for augmenting the attitude you talked about?
good indicators augmenting the attitude, which is augmenting means it talks about which is a symbol of this thing or which reflects something like this, right, Rajeshwarji?
In the sense that something that will strengthen, or the right attitude, or what will strengthen that attitude.
What can strengthen that? Okay. I'm a little bit weak in English, no? That's why. Okay. So how does it strengthen this? Can you repeat the question again if you don't mind? Sorry.
Yes. What could be the good indicators for augmenting the attitude you talked about?
Okay. The good indicators has to start from the neck of the bottle is at the top. Okay. The constraint is always at the top. The organizational head has to have the guts to try. This attitude has to be nurtured. For example, at home also, when you have to build an attitude, you have to essentially walk the talk. So it starts from the top. So if the top is going to look at conformance as the only way to do things, don't expect somebody to go to any extent of coming with creative ideas. At the same time, other extreme. If the top says, guys, all of you please be creative and come with ideas, it can be chaotic. The creativity has to be channelized. Creativity has to be channelized typically means where I need to be creative also is important. Let me give an example. For example, suppose I talk about a slightly technical example I'll take. I am dealing in variety of products. If I deal in variety of products, I need enormous flexibility in my processes. So if I have to motivate my people to move towards that strategy of doing that, being responsive to the customer needs, I have to see how we can build flexibility. Suppose this flexibility is hindered by an equipment where changeover time is pretty long, that is where I'm supposed to have my creativity applied. Suppose if this flexibility is hindered by unique skills required for doing a job, multi-skilling is where my creativity has to be applied. So if multi-skilling has to be established, I need to look at how I can de-skill the jobs. So my creativity has to have a direction. Directionless creativity can be disastrous. Direction, creativity with the proper direction, with the vision from the senior management can definitely help in augmenting this particular thing better. I hope I answered your question. Yes, sir.
Okay, there's one question on customer centric was mentioned at various points during the session. Does it mean only external customers? If so, what about internal customers?
Customer, when you say customer, I'm using a slightly broader perspective. Anybody who is impacting or impacted by your business is your customer. I repeat, anybody who is impacting and impacted, the influencers. Your customer may be your dealer, your customer may be your ultimate consumer, your customer may be the guy who funds it, your customer may be the guy at the gate also. That is external. Your customer can be internal as well. Sometimes what happens, we take our internal customers very seriously and forget about external customers. And we work in silos. Okay, when we start working in silos, we lose track of the external customer. How many times you find this happening? Sir, our company ka policy aisa hai, sir. In our company policy is like this, so we can't dispatch it. How many times you have seen you cannot dispatch goods to your customer because your vendor code has not been created, a customer code has not been created in the system. I cannot purchase goods from this supplier because vendor code has not been created. We have seen it so many times, right? So sometimes we take the internal customer too seriously and forget about external customer. We have to be empathetic to the internal customer, no doubt about that. But you have to be highly empathetic to external customer. Because ultimately they are the one who pay our salaries and profit, right? Don't ignore internal customer, but don't be overtly pleasing the internal customer. We have to align to the external customer. True, sir.
Okay. Chandrasekharan V is asking a question or requesting that the small group activity required more explanation.
Okay. So small group activities is the better way I can put it. I will put it something like this. Sir, is there a whiteboard I can use here?
If you have an iPad, you could have used it.
Oh, I don't have an iPad. I'm a very traditional laptop guy. Okay, never mind. So what if it is not there? I will use a traditional pen and paper. No issues. Can you see this sheet of paper? All of you?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Give me exactly a minute. Why should I struggle? I'll do another option. Wait, just give me a second now. Sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just give me a second. I will share my screen now. Hello?
Yes, sure.
Chandrasekhar, you can see my screen now? I hope you can, right? Okay. So I'm simply making a 4x4, 2x2 matrix. Since I'm talking about a small group activity. Okay. There are two dimensions here I'm going to talk about. This dimension is primarily, this part of this is primarily my problem. And this part is my solution. So it can be a simple solution, simple problem, or a complex solution, complex problem. 4 possibilities. It can be solution may be a simple solution, or solution may be a complex solution. Problem can be a simple problem or a complex problem. So I'm having 4 dimensions here. I hope you can see this, all of you. Okay, could see that, right?
Yes.
If a problem is simple and the solution is simple, for example, this problem is happening within my department, within my table. I don't require anybody else to be involved in this. This has to be simple suggestion, implemented suggestion is what I am supposed to do. I'm supposed to implement simple suggestions. I don't have to depend on anybody. No small group activity here. Simple, implemented suggestions. Suppose my problem is simple, but the solution is complex. What is the meaning of that? Problem is simple, requires some kind of what you call tweaking of some processes, tweaking of some policies. Therefore, it calls for some more senior management involvement. In this case, you need small group activities. So you need a small group activity. In the case of a simple problem and complex solution, you will have something like what is called as small group activities. If it is a complex problem, simple solution, even this may require some small group activities. There's a subtle difference. I'm not getting into that. Complex problem, complex solution, you require what is called as a task force. So if you look at this context, where do I create a small group is primarily where it falls into this or this category. What is this? There is a problem in my department, but it calls for solution cutting across multiple functions. I need a small group activity. There is a problem in my department which calls for some investment, which calls for some analysis. I may require a small group activity. So the first level, first of all, we should know where we should have a small group activity. Simple problem, complex solution, complex problem, simple solution. And once we have a small group activity, then we have to think about what kind of composition this small group activity should have. That purely depends upon what kind of dimensions this problem is going to address. Suppose this problem involves some technology, maybe an IT guy should be there. It involves some supply chain, some purchase guy should be there. Okay. Most important thing, is it going to be, can it be done as part of the job itself, or should it be done as a separate job by itself? That's where I'm going to think about whether I should bridge or bridge. So should I take somebody out of the department and keep it separately for this is what I have to take a call. So small group activities has to have a very clear agenda given, has to be time bound, has to be finite result. I hope I answered this question.
Thank you. We'll take another maybe 2 or 3 questions. Surya, who put up his hand to want to speak, but I'm going to take his question from the question box. He has 2 questions. One has to do with the vigilance angle in government and large organizations. So there are policies around which inflexibilities, I'm thinking that. So vigilance around large organization and government, and customer friendliness may mean more than satisfying the customer, where to draw the line.
See, this vigilance or the regulations which are there, let us be clear about it. As a father, we have a role. Should I give what the kid wants, or should I give what the kid needs? So when I say I need to give what the kid needs, and rather than what the kid wants, if I'm going to keep on fulfilling what the kid wants, I think I'm going to create a spoiled brat. Similarly, my customer may be annoyed with some of the procedures or policies which are required for governance, which are required for ensuring there's no slippage happening in the case of values, which are required to fulfill the governmental regulations. I have to follow this because government is an extremely important impactor and impacted. Impacted because of regulations, impacted because it represents a society. Therefore, a vigilance requirement of the government cannot be wished away and say that I will bypass all these rules and regulations and do it. So therefore, what I need to do, I need to see whether this where technology can play a role as well. Okay? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. What would that? Okay. The other questions, most of them are basically applaud for you. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session. Kindly send us the slides. Wonderful session. Thank you for such a fantastic session. Thank you, sir. Eye-opening session. The session was excellent. Thank you, etc. These are the ones. So okay. I think we'll bring this to a close unless, Professor, you have some concluding comments to make.
Concluding comment is only I'm going to borrow something from what my dear friend Rajeshwar always says. A good session is one, and he talks about a great session. Whatever be a session, ultimately, a session should leave something for the audience to go back and search on their own and learn on their own. My suggestion is primarily, please do go back and do some homework and try to explore a little bit more than what we discussed here. What we discussed is a tip of the iceberg. It is not the be-all and end-all, definitely. All of you know that as well. Do some homework of some of the jargons I used in the session. I think you will get definitely a lot more perspectives in the process. Thank you so much for the patience. I hope I fulfill the requirement laid out by the Academy. Rajeshwar, closing remarks from you.
Absolutely, Professor Harihara. It was wonderful having you again. Thank you for your time and the passion you show in your session, as well as in the question answer sessions. We all greatly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And to my participants, thank you for logging on for this session. We have 2 more webinars lined up. We will send you intimations for those. Please log in and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much and wish you all the best.